Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to be back. I guess for 2 Sundays now. Some of you have just seen me for the first time on a Sunday, but so I brought a few coconuts back from Florida, and I was going to open them up one way or another, and I figured a lot of people here have never seen a coconut in a husk, let alone opening it. Anyways, I thought also I was supposed to give an update of Florida, so I wrote out a little summary of what we did. And if you have any questions, you can let me know. But with this coconut, I wanted to make an object lesson about how good things take effort in life. That is, whether it's good habits, how we relate to family, how we control our emotions, do we get angry, these sort of things. Good things take effort. Harvey mentioned about weeds growing in gardens. I don't know how long ago that was. It just takes an effort to keep a garden clean. Taking up our cross and serving Christ. Good. And usually the things that we put effort into are the things that we consider important in life. Anyways, in this case, though, I just thought for an object lesson, the good what we're trying to get to is the coconut. Now, we won't open it this morning, but if we could husk it, I was going to see if I could get some volunteers, but I might just pick a few boys. David, you want to help me out? Compa? Do you have any of you have a Leatherman? You got one? Okay. I don't know if it's quite fair if you have a small one. Matthew, you got a bigger Leatherman? Anybody else? Well, it might work just fine. I'll give you the easier coconut. So I don't know if, let's move this stuff. It's like some more props going on here. Let's just move this. Whoops, what is under there? Okay. All right. So as they work on opening these coconuts, I'm going to read the story about Florida. So these two dropped while I was there. There was 2 coconut trees on the property. This one here was pretty green, and it kind of dried out. I don't know if it's good for sure. You can open that, compa. And this one here is dried out. So as they work on opening that, maybe I'll mention that, does anyone know what Newton's third law of motion is? Or one of the statements? It is a simple saying most of you probably know, what goes up must come down. Paul mentions this same sort of principle in Galatians. I'll read that when we get to the end. But what a man sows, that is what he reaps. So as they're cutting these coconuts, if they were cutting rotten coconuts, at the end of the day, they would get rotten fruit. Now, hopefully it's good fruit, but anything we put effort towards is what we will reap. All right. If you have any questions, just let me know. I just kind of wrote it as a story, so I'll just read it and then. As you may know, we left Florida on December 22nd. Drove till we were about an hour west of Birmingham, Alabama, and then we stopped for the night. The next morning, we started off around 2:30 a.m. We got to Fort Myers, Florida around 5 in the afternoon. As we drove into the lot, we saw Daniel and Micah fishing, which is something we did a lot when we were there. We parked on the north side of the lot. This is just to give you an idea how this looks. So we parked on the north side of the lot facing east. Norman's parked on the south side of the lot back then facing west. and Mike's had backed in their camper on the west side. There was a canal about 60 feet wide on the east side of the lot, and the road ran along the west side. The front end of the bus was about 15 feet from the water's edge. There was a small bank about 2 to 4 feet high off the water. It would depend on the tide, if the tide was up or down, how much of a drop there was. And that evening, Norman's and Mike's had prepared a supper for us, so that was a blessing. We set camp up over the next several days. Took the children a little bit of time to warm up, but after that, they played for the next few months, almost every single day for most of the day. Norman's bus was about 30 feet away from ours, with a utility trailer in between. And then about 100 feet from where we were parked, so maybe 40 feet on the other side of the canal or so, there was a 3-lane interstate. So it was a constant roar of rubber on the road and occasionally a poorly muffled engine. It was hard to understand anyone from any distance. Just before we got there, Norman had picked up a tri-tune. It's a pontoon with 3 floats. It had a hauling capacity of 2,600 pounds and had a 115 horsepower Yamaha engine on it. It was going to be our work truck on water. But first we needed to paint the bottom of the floats to prevent the barnacles from attaching. The barnacles are little, some of you may know what they look like, maybe not. They're little clam-looking things that permanently attach to things, and they can attach to the bottom of your boat till there might be several hundred pounds or 500 pounds of them just stuck on the bottom of your boat. So there's a certain type of paint we had to use to keep them from doing that. But before we started on that repair, we decided to go look at the island. I do not think Normans had looked at the island since they were there, and I think they were there already for several weeks before we got there. So we went to the nearest and easiest to get to public boat ramp, which was the day after we got there. All 3 families climbed aboard and embarked for the island. As we headed out away from the lot, there was about 400 feet of canal before we got to the Caloosahatchee River. Once we were out on the river, we headed downstream. The river may be around 3,500 feet wide at this point. Now that was just a guess. I'm not exactly sure. With the islands and stuff, it was a little tricky. We used we see the island to our left, almost for half a mile before we get to the spot where there used to be a beautiful and expensive dock, gazebo and all. Now there was only piers jutting out of the water. Some had big planks on them, and there was one partly broken down dock left. We went on the south side of the broken down dock and headed towards the bank of the island. There was not much to see from the perspective of the river, other than mangroves and small trees growing along the shoreline. As we got off, we noticed 2 abandoned boats to our right, and a little further into the trees there was a sailboat tangled up in the trees. We started exploring. There were 3 houses on the island. One up on the hill of sand, and the other 2 about 60 feet from the water's edge. As we got to the upper house, there was junk littered everywhere. Small palm trees and other things had grown up, giving it that deserted look. The front porch was full of junk, and the front doors were broken, and inside the house was no better. Junk everywhere, hundreds if not thousands of beer cans. Maybe thousands, I'm not sure. There was a lot. The kitchen had, you can sit down, David, if you want. I said you can sit down if you want. We'll open them up later. And the kitchen had eggshells scattered around, filth and signs of negligence everywhere. I don't know who was there last, but it seems like they fried the eggs and just threw the shells on the floor. There was just probably hundreds of eggshells. Just messy, nasty. The bedroom had rotted clothes on the floor. It also hosted a king-size bed, dresser, and more junk. The bathroom was no better. It was being occupied by many rats. Some sections of the floor and ceiling were rotten where the roof had failed. Some of the windows were broken. It did not look that appealing. It will definitely need a lot of work. Once it was a nice house, finished inside with cedar and a nice screened-in porch to relax on. Now it was a house for rats. What happened? The second house was a little better, but still a far cry from decency. It was a 2-story house, a bedroom with a balcony upstairs. It too was finished with cedar on the inside, but it did not stay totally dry because the roof was compromised and water had found its way in. The floor had also sunk in different spots, giving it an uneven look, maybe as much as a foot, maybe even more from one end to the other. Now, part of the reason I didn't write it down here, but part of the reason it sunk was because if the tide was really high, it actually reached underneath that house. So it was on little piers, and the soil there is not very solid. The third house was connected to the second house by a walkway that had a roof. Now, the third house was a total disaster. A bulldozer or excavator would be the tool of choice for it. There were sections where the roof was non-existent. Even still, it had a few places that stayed semi-dry. As we went around, we realized that we would not be moving to the island anytime soon, if ever. There were some outer sheds and a few other things around, like an inboard boat on a trailer with plants growing in and around it, a burnt tractor, gopher tortoise holes, and a very interesting outside beehive. Some of you saw that. I don't know if everybody did. The beehive was just built on the outside of the house. Around here that wouldn't work, but I guess where it's warm it does. After looking around, we got back and went around one side till we got to the tracks, and then we went the other way. If I remember right, we only went part of the way and then went back to the lot. I should explain, it had a railroad track going across. So here's the island, here's the railroad track, and here was a gate that they could lift, and we would what's that? That's all right. So we'd go around through the gate, and then the tracks here did not have a gate. They were only like 3-4 feet off the water. And then on the other, so we had to stop and then come back around and go all the way around the island if we wanted to see the backside. The next few days we finished cleaning some brush and junk from the landing lot. Norman had done most of the clearing before we got there. Sunday afternoon we had a small service. Due to the noise of traffic, it was hard to sing, and if someone talked quietly, it was hard to understand. The rest of the week we sanded the floats, primed and painted them. Also replaced the water pump, impeller on the engine, and wiring. We also started to clean up the island. Over the next several weeks, we put tarps on the roofs and of the first and second house. Cleaned up the houses and brush around the buildings. We also did quite a bit of fishing in the time that we were there on the lot. One day, Daniel and I came back from the scrap yard, and we noticed a city truck parked close to the driveway. There was some electrical work being done close by, so we didn't think much about it. But then he came out, and Mike went to talk with him. He was a code inspector, and he made it clear that we were not compliant with codes. First off, Norman had patched the lane with extra lane entrance with some gravel. I don't know if he got 1,000 pounds or something. Not very big pile, maybe 2, and dumped it in, and they said that you had to pull a permit for that, which we didn't know when that happened. There's a little hole in the lane. Secondly, it was supposed to be an empty lot. Not even as much as a bucket was supposed to be on it. 2 yellow buses and a camper, truck, utility trailer, and a porta-john was definitely not even remotely compliant. Since Since then, they have sent fines, put a poster of the violation at the driveway entrance, which was when I left, and I heard that recently they had a court summons for the owner. I don't know how that all works out. It's just not a good feeling. I don't like setups like that. So that inspired us to move to the island even a little more. This was around January 2020s, somewhere early 20s maybe. The island was zoned for living, also zoned for agriculture, if I remember right. Also, we wanted to get away from the traffic noise and publicity in case that would make things harder. So we started to look at options. It did not seem feasible to move into the houses. So Norman found some decent sized army tents and we got and set up. So on January 24th, Norman and our family moved on the island. I am sure the boatload of people and their belongings was a sight to behold floating down the river. It was much better on the island. The children had space to roam and play in the sand, which was everywhere and often in the water. There were trails to be cut out and places to explore. Time moved quickly. One day we came back from a boat ride and Maria noticed Frisky, their dog, was barking differently. So Norman went to see and he discovered these big tracks. After a little research, he decided it was a mountain lion. He came and got me, and that is what we concluded. By this time, Norman's family had moved into the second house, at least partially. We were still sleeping in the tent. I must say I did wake up a few times during the night, but I did not hear anything. The next morning we found out that Maria and Sarah heard something big crashing through the woods right beside their house and caught a raccoon. Norman woke up in time to hear the last sounds of a dying raccoon makes in the mouth of a cat. At least we assume that's what it was. To the best of their knowledge. He got his 410 out and went out to see if there was anything to see. But there was nothing. All was quiet. I'm not sure, he just wanted to go see if he could see it, or it was at 2:40 in the morning or something like that. Yeah.
You said the raccoon was dying in the mouth of the cat?
Well, they heard it getting caught, and then it was like a squeak, 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 squeak. Like that.
House cat. You were thinking maybe the mountain.
Yeah, it was definitely something bigger.
I was just wondering what was the 410 about? Was he just going to make the cat angry?
At least a little self-protection, maybe. I don't know, he just wanted to go see, I guess, what was out there. He did wonder if Maria and those would have... He didn't hear the crashing through the woods. He wondered if they would have thought something different if they wouldn't have known that there was a mountain lion around, but they thought that they would still would have known the difference. So, the next morning, in the morning there were a few new tracks as well, so there was evidence that he was still around. That day, a feeling of suspense was in the air. Children did not roam because they are more apt to be on the menu. I wondered when I would see the cat looking right at me, almost blending in its surroundings. But as the days went by, we never saw any evidence of its presence. It left as quick as it came. Things almost went back to normal. There were 2 coconut trees, 4 lime, 1 wild orange, and 1 star fruit tree. We got to taste each fruit and nut. One thing the children got accustomed to was stand around and watch us open the coconuts, and then stood there holding out their hands, eating the meat almost as fast as I could dish it out. Rob got to experience a little bit. Opening a coconut and the children liking that.
Yeah, I noticed David did it right.
We were blessed by Rob and Yolanda's visit. They came down the second time for the Sunday service. As the departure time came close, we started to wrap things up. We got the boat beach several times, including the day we left the island. Most of us had to pitch in and help get the boat out in the water, including the women and children. Norman would count on 3, and we slowly would get the boat turned around till it was facing the river or in the water. The last community outing we had was a boat ride up the Orange River. It was a blessing and a good experience for us, but we are also thankful to be back. It is not nice to part with dear people, whether that is here before we left or leaving Norman's and Mike's. But there is a day coming when the faithful will meet to part no more. Anyways, on the 22nd of February, we headed back and rolled safely home on the 23rd. Thankfully, everything went very smoothly. Bus held up and everything. Any questions?
Was there still ice on the road in Alabama?
We didn't go through Alabama.
Oh, you didn't go through
We went north of there. But yeah, we didn't see any ice there, I remember. Might have been little piles of snow in some north.
You went to North Carolina, right?
No, we went up through Georgia and then Tennessee and then back to Georgia a little bit and then up through Kentucky. Well, it looks like our coconuts are done. I assume both of them are good. We'll try those out later. Let me get, whoops. I just like to read this Galatians 6:7 in closing, considering fruit and the effort that it takes to get to the fruit sometimes. Actually, all the time. No good fruit is won freely. There is something like being grandfathered in a little bit. What parents bear some weight works both ways. If the parents are evil, the children have the baggage of that. If the parents are godly, the children can benefit from that. But at the end of the day, they still have to put effort out for the good fruit. So I just wanted to read Galatians 6:7 through 10. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, this he will also reap. For the one who sows to the flesh will reap from the flesh, reap corruption. But the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who are of the household of faith. That's all I got for this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd, for that update. Elmo Stoll once wrote a story that was titled "Life is a Hickory Nut," and he was bringing out the same point you were trying to bring out here, that good things take effort, and there's like a hickory nut is one of the tastiest nuts of small nuts, but they're not all that popular because they're so not as common or popular as a pecan or a English walnut, or because they're so hard to get. The nut is so hard to crack, so hard to get the meat out of it, and yet the one who's willing to go through the work to do it has an excellent nut, and that is. Oh, I sometimes think about how. Part of our worldview, I would say, is that that the earth has a curse, and that good things don't happen. Good things don't just happen without effort. Or if you build a building, it takes effort to build it. Not only that, it takes effort to maintain it. There'll never be a whirlwind and a thunderstorm and a tornado and it'll erect a building. It always works the other way. It destroys it. And so it takes... I guess I tend to think that kind of maybe subtly and sometimes not so subtly, there's a philosophy and a worldview that people can have that tend to believe that like if we would just not interfere, all things would be good. All things would turn out good. If we would not interfere, if man would do no work, and I think maybe tied in with that kind of philosophy or worldview would be the idea that out of nothing there was an explosion and it created something. That's just not reality. Anyway, I agree with your lesson here, and I appreciate the update.
Thanks for the update, Lloyd. I just was thinking about your object lesson and just how your experience on the island kind of plays into that. I don't really have any, I mean, maybe it doesn't even need to be said, but it seems like someone's going to have to invest an awful lot of sweat equity into that place to make it a fruit-bearing place again. And turn it into something that can be more than just a home for rats and wildlife. And then I guess I was thinking about like spiritually, every human soul carries so much potential. That island carried a ton of potential to be a really beautiful, to really truly be a beautiful island with a lot of stuff. And every human soul does too. And yet many of them harbor all kinds of bad habits, vices, and things that are separating them from God. And with a whole lot of repentance and sweat equity and a lot of work, any human soul can be turned into a vessel of honor to the Lord. Anyway, I just appreciated your lesson.
Thanks for the object lesson and the update. I really enjoyed it, and I just want to thank God that that panther was more interested in raccoons than your family. And that's all I wanted to say.
I was thinking about the lesson itself, and even though I said that David did it right the first time, I was thinking about the difference between the goal of the object lesson was that they'd get to the coconut, get it out. David may have gotten to it quicker using the method that he did, but Compa still got to it. He may have had to work a little harder for it, but I think that might go along the lines of like different Christians having different skills and abilities. Maybe they will try things differently, but at the end of the day, they may make it there anyways. So that was my thought on it. I thought I would have been wrong to say that David had all the credit. I think Compa still got there.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Lloyd. I was reminded of a conversation I think we had down at when you and your family was down at my place maybe a couple years ago. I was thinking about this. That we was sitting there looking at this big pear tree that I got in my yard, and this pear tree is so fruitful. It just produces so many pears, it'd just break the branches. And I think we talked many different things about it, but it's kind of like us in many different ways. However, we may apply this. But I was just reminded of this pear tree. It bears so much fruit, but if the master of the land doesn't harvest this fruit, this good and perfect fruit, well, then here comes the hornets, here comes the flies, it falls to the ground, it causes a big, nasty mess. So it's kind of like us. If we bear this good fruit, but we want to take the credit, man wants to have all the glory to himself, but if we're not willing to give God the glory and the credit where it deserves, and not let God harvest our fruit, which he deserves, which he said he'll purge, he'll harvest and purge where we can bear more fruit. If we try to keep that to ourselves, it will become a nasty, rotten fruit on the ground there and cause flies and hornets and such things, kind of like this pear tree. If we don't pick all these pears and do these things, it'd just be a nasty mess out there in the yard. But I guess my main point is at the end of the day, we need to give God his glory and give him his credit and let him purge us to see, where he sees fit. But thanks, brother. All glory to the Lord. Bless y'all.
Jesus calls us, Lord, unto